class, we're about to start lesson 8, slope of a line. It says slope is the measurement of the steepness of a line. Imagine a road going up a hill. If the road must climb upward over a short forward distance, the road would be very steep. Slope measures the relationship between rise, how high the road must climb, and run, the distance the road goes forward. On a coordinate grid, a line that moves upward from left to right has a positive slope. A line that moves downward from left to right has a negative slope. You can find the slope of a line on a coordinate grid by writing the ratio of rise to run. Now, just to explain what was just said, when you look at a graph here, the graph, you read it like you do a book. You will go from left to right. And so when you go from left to right, you look at the line. Going from left to right, if the line is going upward, going left to right, that means that the slope is positive. If the line is going downward, like we see here, from left to right, that means it's negative. That's what they mean by the statement that I just read. Now, rise over run deals with the y and x values. Now, we did go over this once before, and I would like to write out the formula for slope. Now, there are actually three formulas that you may notice with slope. So, one formula, we have m is equal to the change in y over the change in x. That's one formula. The next formula is rise over run. And then finally, the next formula is y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Now you can use any one of these to represent slope. So now, what we're going to do, we have to determine the what y2, y1, x2, and x1 is. Now remember how I told you all before that when you do an ordered pair, it would be x first and y second. Okay, now, what ends up happening with slope, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull up a problem so you can actively see it being done. Let's do problem number 4. Number 4 says use the slope formula to find the slope of a line that passes through the following pair of points. So we would do number 4, and the 2 points are 3, 5, and also negative 1, 2. Those are the 2 points. Now we notice here, each one of these have an x and a y value. So that is not an issue. So the first one has an xy value, and then the second has an xy value. Okay, now, what happens is this here. The x sub 1 and y sub 1, x sub 2 and y sub 2 tells you which coordinate to pull it from. Like the first coordinate is really your x sub 1, y sub 1. That is your first one. The second coordinate is your x sub 2 and your y sub 2. Okay, so now that we know that, we got x sub 1, y sub 1. Matter of fact, let me do this. I'm going to put them below each other. This first parenthesis is your x sub 1, y sub 1. The second parenthesis is your x sub 2, y sub 2. So this is letting you know what each of these mean. So now, since we have what each of them mean, all we have to do is substitute that into this slope formula here. Now I'm going to go down a little bit on my paper because I ran out of room here. So let me slide this down here, and I'm going to rewrite number 4 again. So we had 3, 5, negative 1, 2, and we know this is x sub 1, y sub 1, and this is x sub 2, y sub 2. Now we're going to use the slope formula. The slope formula of y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Now we just go through and substitute it. Y sub 2 is 2. Y sub 1 is 5. All over x sub 2 is negative 1. And x sub 1 is 3. Now, we have 2 minus 5, which is negative 3. Negative 1 minus 3 is negative 4. Now we know a negative divided by a negative is positive, so our final answer here, our slope would be 3/4. So this is how you would do that formula. Remember, these sub numbers just tells you which ordered pair to pull the values from. So your slope here is a positive 3/4. Now we're going to do another problem. So let's do problem number, problem number 5. Using the same method. We have 0, 2, and we have 4, 0. Now again, if you want to mark this, you can. We know this would be x of 1, y sub 1, and this would be x of 2, y sub 2. So it's the x in the first coordinate, the y in the first coordinate, the x in the second coordinate, and the y in the second coordinate. So we had a slope is equal to y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Now we substitute. Y sub 2 is 0, and y sub 1 is 2. And then here, x sub 2 is 4, and x sub 1 is 0. 0 minus 2 is negative 2. 4 minus 0 is 4. So we know a negative divided by a positive, we know that's going to be negative. But 2 over 4, we could divide both by 2, and that would give us a negative 1/2. So our slope is a negative 1/2. All right, now let's take a look at number 6. Number 6, we have 4, 2, and we also have 2, 2. Okay, so now we will set this up like we did the other problems. So now, again, if you want to mark this, you could say x sub 1, y sub 1, x sub 2, y sub 2. But you should actually be thinking about that in your head more so than you having to write it down all the time. Okay, so now we go here. So we have our slope is equal to y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Y sub 2 is 2, and y sub 1 is 2. All over x sub 2 is 2, minus x sub 1 is 4. 2 minus 2 is 0. 2 minus 4 is negative 2. 0 divided by negative 2 is 0. So your slope here will be 0. Okay, now we're going to look at problems 7, 8, and 9. So problem number 7. We have 6, 1, and then 0, 3. So we have the slope is equal to y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Y sub 2 is 3, minus y sub 1 is 1. X sub 2 is 0, minus x sub 1 is 6. 3 minus 1 is 2. 0 minus 6 is negative 6. Now we could divide both of these by 2, and this will give us a negative 1/3. So your slope is a negative 1/3. Now we look here at problem number 8. Problem number 8, we have 1, 4, and negative 2, negative 2. So we have our slope. Now we can see the formula up here. Y sub 2 is negative 2, minus y sub 1 is 4. All over x sub 2 is negative 2, minus x sub 1 is 1. Negative 2 minus 4 is negative 6. Negative 2 minus 1 is negative 3. Negative divided by negative is positive, and 6 divided by 3 is 2. So your slope here is just 2. All right, now we go back here to problem number 9. So with problem number 9, we have this 4, -2, and 2, 4. Okay, so let me scoot this over here. Problem number 9, we have 4, -2, and 2, 4. So we have our slope, y sub 2 is 4, minus y sub 1 is -2, all over x sub 2 is 2, minus x sub 1 is 4. 4 minus a -2, we know becomes 4 plus 2, and 2 minus 4 is -2. So 4 plus 2 is 6, all over -2. We know a positive divided by a negative is negative, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. So our slope is -3. And that is our final answer for problem number 9. Now we're going to move on here. All right, so the next thing that we need to do, now I want to go back up because we went over the slope formula, but this little few sentences here, it says, in working with slope, there are a few special circumstances that you should memorize. A horizontal line, just like a flat stretch of roadway, has a slope of 0. So if you see a horizontal line, then you know automatically that the slope should be 0. The slope of a vertical line is undefined. In other words, our definition of slope would not work for a line that has no run at all. So basically, we know a vertical line is just going straight up and down. So what we need to do here, if we go back down here to problem number 3, look at problem number 3. If you notice here, isn't this a horizontal line? So with problem number 3, we're supposed to automatically know that our slope is 0. Our slope is 0. We don't have to do any calculations for that because we see that that is a horizontal line. So automatically your slope is 0. Now, if we go here to problem number 1, first of all, if we look at this from left to right, with problem number 1, we notice that our slope has to be a positive number. That's the first thing we need to know. So now what we need to do is get 2 points, and then we can solve for slope like we did in problems 4 through 9. So if you look here on problem number 1, there's an exact point here and an exact point here. So let's write those points out. So with number 1, we'll move 1 to the left from the origin, 1 to the left, and then we will go down 2. So that first order pair would be -1, -2. Now the second order pair, we go back to the origin. We move 1, 2 to the right. So that means your x is 2. And then we go up 1. So that means your y is 1. Now it doesn't matter which order pair you wrote first or second. It still will come out to be the same thing as far as finding your slope. So now we go to our slope formula. Now we know y sub 2 is 1 minus y sub 1 is -2. All over x sub 2 is 2 minus x sub 1 is -1. So this will be 1 plus 2 all over 2 plus 1. 1 plus 2 is 3 and 2 plus 1 is 3. So that equals +1. So your final answer, your slope, is +1. Okay, so now that solves problem number 1. Now we move on to problem number 2. Now with problem number 2, if you notice here, when we go left to right, you notice that the graph is going downward. So that tells us that our final answer should be a negative number. Our slope should be negative. Okay, so now that we know our slope should be negative, we just need to find 2 points here. So if we look here, we have this point and this point, which is exact points. So for number 2, our first order pair, we could go 1 to the left, which would mean x would be negative 1. And then we will go 1, 2, 3 up. So 3 up will give us a positive 3 for y. Now we go to the second point. You'll go back to the origin. You'll go to the right 1, which means x is positive 1. And then you will go down 1, which means y is negative 1. Alright, so now we will do our slope. We have y sub 2, which is negative 1, minus y sub 1 is 3. All over x of 2 is 1, minus x of 1 is negative 1. So negative 1 minus 3 is a negative 4. 1 minus a negative 1 is 1 plus 1. So we have our slope is equal to negative 4 over 2. A negative divided by a positive is negative, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. So our slope is negative 2. So now, we answer problems 1, 2, and we answer problems from 1 through 9. Now we have to finish this off. We're going to C. It says choose the one best answer for each question. Now question 10, it says refers to the following graph. We see all of these different lines and they're labeled by the letters. Okay, which of the following lines shown on the graph has a slope of negative 1/3? So now before we go through and start solving, let's look at a few of them that we know definitely is not. We know C cannot be it because C is a horizontal line. And we know with a horizontal line, the slope is automatically 0. So that means C is gone. Now we look here. Let's see. We got line B. I look at line B here. When you go from left to right, you notice that line B is going up. So that means that that has a positive slope. So that gets rid of B as well. So B and C is gone. Now we look at line A. Now with line A, going from left to right, we know that this line is going downward. So we know that that's going to have a negative slope. So we could look at line A in just a second. Let's find line D. If you look here at line D, do you notice line D is going upward when you go right to left? So line D is excluded. So the only one that's left is line A. So your answer would be A for number 10. So number 10, your answer would be A. Now, of course, I got to show you how it's A because you're not going to be able to eliminate all of them like we just did here. Now, this is where that rise over run will come into play. So what we would do is we would go to line A. It doesn't matter which points you go to, but you want them to be exact points. So if you go to line A, you notice there's an exact point here and there's an exact point here. So if you go to line A, you got a couple of options. You could do rise over run. So you could rise, this will rise you up 1. And then you could run, you have to go 1, 2, 3 until you get to the next point. So with A, to go up to the line where the other point is, you'll go from this point here, you'll go up 1. So when you rise, so remember, the slope is also rise over run. So we rose 1. So 1 would be your numerator. Now we run. We go 1, 2, 3. But we went 3 to the left. So that means that it'll be negative 3. So that's how you get a negative 1/3. Okay, now we go here to problem 11. Okay, now with problem 11, it says line N passes through the following points. They give us these 4 points. What is the slope of line N? Now, what ends up happening here, it really doesn't matter which 2 points you use. because if they're all on the same line, whatever 2 points you use should still give you the same slope. So what I'm going to do here for problem number 11, I'm just going to use the first point and the last point just to mix it up a little bit. So we add 0, 4, and then we add 3, -2. So then we have our slope is equal to, you'll do y sub 2 minus y sub 1 all over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Okay, so -2 minus 4 is a -6. 3 minus 0 is 3. Negative divided by positive, we know is negative. And 6 divided by 3 is 2. So your slope is a -2. So our slope is -2, so our answer here would be B. Okay, now we move on to problem number 12. It says line L passes through point 1, 0 and has a slope of 3. Which of the following points also lies on line L? Okay, so we have a couple options we could do. So what I'm going to do, like we have traditionally done, because I don't want to take all of the time going through each problem, what I'm going to do is pick out the correct answer and then show you what you would have done to get the correct answer. The correct answer would be C, which is 2, 3. So this is what we would need to do. So we have problem number 12. So we're given a point 1, 0, and we're told that the slope is 3. All right, so we know that the slope formula is m is equal to y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So here, this is our x1 and our y1. So now we need to do our x2 and y2. And this is where that other ordered pair comes into play. So we're going to use that ordered pair, the 2, 3. I'm going to write it here. So with 2, 3, we're going to do that as x sub 2 and y sub 2. So we go through and substitute. Now we're given what m is. So m is supposed to be 3. And y sub 2 is 3. Minus y sub 1 is 0. All over. X sub 2 is 2. And x sub 1 is 1. So now we have 3 is equal to 3 minus 0 is 3. 2 minus 1 is 1. 3 is equal to 3 over 1, which is 3 is equal to 3. So that works. So your answer would be 2, 3, and it would be C. So this is it from lesson 8, slope of a line. I will upload this to YouTube. Have a wonderful day.